This one. Here we go.
Hello, Brian.
Morning.
Boy, you're wearing your stinking Lincoln shirt, eh?
Coming to you live, it's the Auto Hub Show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Pullman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So, told you twice, take advantage. Thank you for asking.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I've found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things to be looked at. I'm Mike Burrell, I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
Good morning and welcome. So I got to present this.
So for everybody, Ian's at his Willie Nelson studio on the road again.
I'm in the big town of Golden, British Columbia. If you're familiar with Golden, it's not a very big place. So I wanted to recommend a few books. The Dealer, which I've read personally with Jim Cardiella. It's about Los Gatos Ferrari. So if you're not familiar with Los Gatos, highly recommend. Entertaining read. Lost Car Companies of Detroit and Preston Tucker, the story about Preston Tucker. Jeff, maybe you can talk about our disclaimer.
Well, of course, it'd be my pleasure. And it's Los Gatos, hey, come on.
Yeah, Los Gatos.
The views and opinions of the guests shared here today are those of them and not necessarily us, the show, or Ian Nethercutt or Jeff Bolo. But heck, it's a funny one, so let's go for it.
And just so you know, our show today is the funny side of auto, and we will actually be appearing live at a few events coming forward. So Used Car Week in Scottsdale is coming up. SEMA, I'll be appearing with my wife, and we'll be doing some stuff. First time at SEMA, so be kind. And then firming up plans for SodaCon, which this year is going on in Baltimore, Maryland. I lived in Baltimore for several years, so I'm looking forward to that one. Stay tuned for more details, and let's get into it. Mr. Jeff.
Well, good morning, and we're going to have a little bit of fun here today. We decided to lighten things up a little bit. Too many of our shows are spent on those dirty, rotten son of a guns, and they're doing this and that, and how dare they, and they're mean, and they're this, and they're that, and customers don't understand. But you know what? None of us got involved in this business because we wanted to go and get stressed out. Nobody got involved because we wanted to give up our lives. Nobody got involved to put in 40-hour days and 3,000-hour weeks. It was fun. And I will never forget when I first got into the business, I thought, this is a lot of fun. Started at 8:30 in the morning, left at 9:30 at night, but it was fun, and it really is. So I want to start with the funniest guy we've ever had on the show. everybody's going, no.
No need to introduce him. We know who he is.
We don't need to introduce him. John Lacka. No, we're gonna start
No.
with Larry, who's our resident comedian, and the reason we have a disclaimer. Hello, Larry. How are you?
Hey, there you go.
Doing very well, gentlemen and everybody. Good to see everybody this morning.
You look very funny. You look
Yeah, what's with the serious face, Larry?
It's so interesting because you said this topic about the funny side, and I thought, how can you not approach this business and not try to have fun?
exactly.
It's very hard for somebody to get angry at you or negotiate hard if they're laughing, if they're smiling. If you'll allow me, Jeff, I probed what's left of my brain and memory for two thoughts that I thought might kick the show off right. The first one is I think I'm the guy that developed EMI. Everybody else gets the credit, but I think I invented early management intervention. The only thing is I did it without the manager's cooperation. What I would do is when I got somebody that looked kind of stiff with that, that real solid, I'm a tough guy body language, I'd walk up to my manager, who always had a look of like a deer in the headlights, and say, hey, can you do me a favor? This guy made too much money last year. Can we overcharge him so he can get the write-off? And of course, the manager would start backing up. And I didn't say that, but in the meantime, it made things a whole lot easier when you started to approach things. Then I got in the habit of paging over the loud system with an easier customer, please come to my desk. Now, everybody thought I was insane, which I technically am, but I had fun. I mean, if you're not going to have fun doing whatever you're doing, why show up? Thoreau said it beautifully. Most men, and by proxy, most women lead lives of quiet desperation. Why the hell would you want to go from point A to point Z and be great?
Well, you know what? That's very true, isn't it? It's too often we make things too serious, and we all expect customers to leave and say, "Oh, this was a great experience." When somebody's sitting there like this, the manager comes in with that face Larry had on a few minutes ago, and and actually, I quite like that, Larry. I remember the managers when you'd go up to them and they'd run and hide.
I had a manager, Jeff, that loved to bask in my glory because I was working at a store that would sign recourse. We would co-sign if we thought if they thought they could make enough money on you. So guys would quit as managers to work as salespeople because the money was incredibly strong. And I blew everybody out of the water, being the intense little devil I was. And my manager would get into the habit of coming over and like saying, "Oh, glad you met our new salesman." And well, so one day he came over. I had a guy I wrangled with forever. I flirted with his wife. I wrangled with him, made a ton of dough. And the manager came over and said, "Well, really glad you met our Mr. Feldman and thank you." And the guy turned to him and said, I got to admit it, he made my wife happy. And if I had any brains, I would have shut up. But instead I said, "You're not the first customer that said that to me." Hey, if you're not going to have fun, why show up?
100%.
Look, Brian Motes is taking notes. I should have used that approach myself, Larry. Brian, you would have got shot. Okay, leave it to the professional lunatics.
No, there's no question. So, Brian, if you got a funny story you can remember.
Let's make sure I was off you. I don't really have. I mean, it's just. Actually, well, I wouldn't.
Wait a minute, Brian.
It was funny. It was funny to me, but it wasn't really a customer.
Brian, they put you on the spot. You don't have me go first for crazy and then put somebody else on. This is like the Rolling Stones just played "Sympathy for the Devil" and you're bringing out one of them lame Canadian bands like April Wine. Go ahead, Brian. Whatever you say, I'll be glad to laugh. Go ahead.
I'm glad you remembered April Wine.
Wow, that's a throwback.
It was just, it was more of a dealer thing. When I was one of the first dealers I went into with Ford Motor Company, we were rolling out the e-commerce platform for them about 6 years ago. One of the first things the dealer principal said, we're in some small town in Central Ohio, and he says, "Well, that darn internet thing," and I just was like, "That internet thing." I mean, this is only like 6-7 years ago, but just wasn't really a customer thing. But I could not, and he was serious. So it was funny to me in the moment, and telling the story is funny, but as far as like, Larry, I can't even begin to compare.
Brian, let me help
So
you.
anything I share.
What do you have on the left breast area of your shirt? You have a Lincoln app, correct?
Yes.
Well, how funny was it when Lincoln thought they would put out the Versailles and they would charge people for Granada and charge them Lincoln money? Cadillac did the same thing with the Cimarron, which was on a Nova body. I was pretty amusing that these heavy duty
Hold on, Mr. Feldman. The Cimarron was on a Cavalier body.
Boom. I hate showing my car ignorance, but once again, when you're as funny as me, you get away with a lot of nonsense.
It's just like with the starting videos, which of course we couldn't broadcast. It shows this actor. You always see him play a villain. Anybody remember who that? Did you see that, John? The opening video, the guy that did the Cadillac.
No, I didn't.
Doesn't matter. It's not that important. I'm trying to remember what he's talking about. It's a pretty cool, funny commercial. But he gets into a Cadillac ELR, which is a pretty cool looking car until you realize it's a Chevy Volt. And then this is the funny part. The manufacturers do this, and they continue to do that. And the latest one, the one I get a laugh over, and people look at me and go, "How dare you?" is you take a look at Audi or the Volkswagen group. So you have a Volkswagen Atlas. You have a Audi Q8. You have the Bentley Bentayga, and then the Lamborghini Urus. They're all the same car. They're all the same platform. So you talk about about Lincoln taking Granada. I don't know. There you are driving a $650,000 Volkswagen.
It was like a buddy of mine years ago. He worked at Lexus, and he was talking about that Subaru B9, which was an SUV they made. And he said, it sounds like a virus. That's the name of the freaking car, the Subaru B9. And I was like, wow.
Even Toyota's doing it now, and it's not so obvious anymore on the electrics.
Oh, yeah?
I got the Toyota BZ XPF. I think that's in honor of Elon Musk.
The BZ XPF is the name?
Whatever the Toyota EV is. Then you got the Subaru Solterra, and you got the Lexus electric SUV, and they all look identical.
But the funniest is the color names. The color names. It's not tan, or it's not this. It's sand dust, or it's...
Or Cadillac, we had Antelope, French Antelope Beige.
Antelope Beige.
I think we're starting off on a strange foot. If we're going to talk about the funniness of this car business, forget about the cars. How about the customers?
Oh yeah.
I had a competitor.
How about the employees?
John, but I get employees hired. Why badmouth them when I got checks in the mail? Listen, I'll never forget this. I was no longer a salesman. I was running the dealership, and I made it my point to talk to everybody. I wanted it through service, I was the one. And I go up to a lady, and we had a competitor. You know what? I'm going to say their name. It was Brad Benson. Brad Benson was a football player for the Giants, and he ran a dealership that was so sleazy that they did, I think he was on Dateline or 2020 talking about how crooked they were. So I come over to say to this lady, now this gets funnier, Ian. I come over to this lady and thank her, and she says, "Are you Mr. Feldman? I saw you on the commercials. This salesman is very nice." And I said, "Thank you." And she continued. She said, "I have to tell you, I went to Brad Benson. I have never been treated so badly in my entire life. It is so nice to be in a place where I'm treated well." And of course, I'm pumped up. My salesman's pumped up. And I go, "Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to earn your business." She says, "Well, you haven't earned it yet. I want to go back and see if Brad Benson will beat your price." This is the logic that makes me wonder why we're insane. This is what we deal with on a daily basis.
Larry, I have to tell you, that reminds me, it's not as funny as that, but it reminds me of something too. I used to go to the Jewish Community Center when I was young, and I work out there all the time. And a guy I was friends with, comes to me and says, "I want to buy a car." Great. So he comes in to see me. We go through the car and everything. I give him a price. And unfortunately, was not one of these guys that said, gross your friends. So I gave him a hell of a deal. So he looks at me and he goes, wow, that's a great deal. I says, yeah. And I said, do you want it? And he says, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go to 3 more dealers. If your price is the best, then I'll come back. And I said, I'll tell you what. We have no deal. Goodbye. Because he just literally said the same thing. Now I'm going to go back and do that.
Jeff, I had a class many moons ago, and a guy said to me, because I was explaining that nobody, particularly in cities, there are certain states in the United States where you can't do a referral or referred dog check.
Yeah.
You can't do it in Virginia. You can't do it in Ohio. But places where I came from, I was working out of Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, in Florida. How can you ever be slow when you can offer somebody 100, 150, 200? I always say people will drive their Bentleys across town to save 3 cents on a liter of gas or a gallon of gas. So I said, reach out to every one of your friends. And a guy raised his hand and he said, like what you're saying, he said, Mr. Feldman, you don't know my friends. If it's a couple of dollars cheaper, they'll go somewhere else. He says, then you need new friends. If your friends don't want to let you make a living, if there's no quid pro quo, hey, you're my buddy. Jeff, this has nothing to do with it and everything to do with it. In my band, I now have 2 sax players, not one.
Sounds very sexy.
That wasn't funny either. Now we'll go back to Brian. You lost your place. But long story short, I met him. I took him to a pizza place, which was my hangout. Introduced him to his wife. He became a landscaper and he worked for me. And he did great work and we were really good buddies. I didn't know he was playing sax at the time, I swear. Long story short, my buddy who worked for me in my body shop quit and decided he wanted to become a landscaper. So I called up the guy who's now my sax player 30 years later and said, I have to let you go. He says, gosh, Larry, did I do something wrong? I said, you didn't do anything wrong. You're a champ, but you're established. You got 1 million customers. This kid's new and I have to give him the business. Then I called back my buddy and said, all right, start doing my lawn. He says, I'm going to give you a big discount. I says, no, you're not. You're going to charge me 10% more than you charge everybody else. There's nothing special about me. I appreciate the people around me. Okay. So to not do that, to be that kind of mean spirit. And let me say this to you. That guy had larger testicles than a porn star to say to a guy that was his friend, yeah, that's a great deal. Let me go to 3 other people. There's a Jewish word here. I'm going to teach you and we're going to make Ian Jewish. That guy's a schmuck. Okay. To say that to a guy as nice as Jeff Polo is ridiculous.
Well,
the funny part is Yiddish has permeated culture, American and Canadian culture so strong. The funniest thing I've ever heard is a lady comes in one day to the dealership and she says, I need a new car. Why? She says, because my car got schmucked. And that those of you know what the literal translation for schmuck is, you would laugh too.
Well, the thing that's funny is I remember the first car deal I did in retail, and I remember it really succinctly, probably because of the first deal, but also because of what the customer said. He says, oh, before I buy the car here, I'm going to have to go to this other store. I'm loyal to them. So we sat down with him in the office, me and the manager at the time, and we said, okay, so how much is your loyalty worth? Is it $50 loyalty? Is it $75? Is it $100? Is that going to do it? And the thing that was funny to me was we ended up getting this deal over $100. And I'm sitting there going, really, like that loyalty is pretty damn cheap in this regard. But the one that I really remember, and I used to obviously do this a lot on a daily basis, which was a lot of fun. That's why I got in the car business, was you'd have a 3 or 4 hour landmark negotiation, and then it would come down to $50 or $100. So the thing that really was funny to me wasn't the fact that it was 3 or 4 hours, but was the fun you had during that time. It wasn't about the $300 to $400 or the $500 or whatever. It was about that certain cultures or certain individuals just like the negotiation part. But the one that really stood apart for me was when I had an Indo-Canadian family and they'd bring multiple generations there to witness the negotiation. So that was always really interesting because it was like, well, the parents were helping the kids and the kids were buying the car, and then the grandkids were there witnessing the whole scenario. It was always
Wait a minute. Ian, we were Cadillac. So we had to compete for many years with Saturn.
Yeah.
And people would come in and say, I don't like to negotiate. I said, great, we've adopted Saturn's pattern. You see the price in the window sticker, pay that.
That's what you
We'll
pay.
wrap it up. I'll get it in the cleanup for you.
Yeah.
Or the
And
people,
then
I only got 5
wait,
minutes. I want
wait,
the
wait a
best
minute.
price.
It's so funny how people say they hate it. It's funny and not funny, hilarious, but funny, peculiar. There was a circumstance here about 10, 12 years ago. A fellow went into a BMW dealership, wanted to get a 7 Series. Negotiate, one of those negotiating type people. They wouldn't do the deal. Okay, he left. So he bought one from out of town and current model year, but it turns out it was a rebuilt. So he gets the car. Now it's a 7 Series. Those of you who understand the car business know BMW 7 Series, just like Mercedes S-Classes. Really, you know, there's a kid's joke about an S-Car go.
Yeah.
S-Class don't go because they're loading all the crazy new stuff into it. Anyway, so this 7 Series had lots of problems. Nobody could fix it. Why? Because it was a rebuilt and the computer, blah, blah, blah. This guy parked his car in front of that dealership on the street with a giant lemon on the roof with signs that they ripped him off and everything else. He didn't buy the car from them. The dealership that wouldn't do his deal, he parked it out there. When they started in the morning, they started to pay their service staff to park on the street. Cover the entire street with the cars, so he couldn't park. So he went to another BMW dealer. And finally, something went away, don't know. But it was tragic. He was actually on the news. That's how bad it was.
But the thing
Hello,
is,
Peter.
Did you have a story, Mr. Peter?
Oh, I think John had a story.
Well, it's not so much a story. It was a comment that a customer made when I was fairly new in the business, and I happened to be selling used vehicles at the time. And the customer said to me after looking at a number of vehicles, are these good used vehicles? I said, no, the good ones go to friends and relatives. This is what's left over for customers like you.
I love it.
Good used vehicles. Oh, we were at NIADA and we were talking to one of the guys at the hotel, and he goes, "Oh, what's going on? What's the convention?" He goes, "Oh," I said, "It's a used car convention." "Oh, those are the guys who are the most untrustworthy car dealers." I said, "The most untrustworthy car dealers? You got to be kidding me, man!" Because they sell used cars. It's like,
you know
wow.
What you should have done, Ian? You should have said, "Sir, come with me." Walked into the lunchtime thing. I said, "I'd like to introduce you to somebody." I get on the stage. Peter, you're going to say something.
Yes, I probably pull up as many stories as Larry can of this great business that we've all enjoyed over the last 40 years. But one really sticks into my mind, and it's from a close friend of mine who also sells BMWs. And we were at a dealership. This would have been in 1998. And my buddy was the pre-owned manager, and there was a guy there that was super A-type personality, bringing in his whatever car it was. I can't even remember what car it was. And he wanted to get it appraised to trade it in on a 7 Series. And he was like, "Okay, I want this for my car." So my buddy Ken turned around and appraised the car, gave the number back to the salesman. The salesman went back to the desk with a customer and presented the number. The guy lit up like a Roman candle. There was sparks flying everywhere, profanities being expelled at louder than our paging system. Where is that person who appraised my car? So he comes running around the corner, and we're standing at the reception desk, as we all did in those days. He goes, "Who's the used car manager?" And my buddy Ken says, "I am." He goes, "You appraised my car at this amount? Where in the hell did you come up with this number?" He goes, "Hold on, before we say anything, sir, see that wall there?" He pointed it up at a blank wall. He goes, "That's where we hang everybody's picture who's happy with their trade-in value." And the guy just stood there and looked up at the blank wall and shut up and went back to the desk and bought the car.
Wow. That was like a salesman I worked with years ago, and the customer offered him full price for the car. So he didn't know what to do. So he went over to the manager. He goes, boss, what should I do? He says, you should take the credit card, do the deal. He goes, really? I'm like, yeah, man.
I got one more story for good old Kenny. He back in, I guess it was 2007, just before 2008, and the .com was just going crazy and everything else. It might have been a little earlier than that. Whatever. He had this doctor buy a ZM convertible, and so the doctor calls back about 3 months after he ordered it and goes, "Hey, Kenny, I gotta renegotiate this deal." And he goes, "My stock portfolio is just taking a beating. This, that, I just can't pay you what you asked for it." And Kenny goes, "Dr. Jones, back when your stocks were going goo for gaga, did I call you up and ask you for more money?" He goes, "No." He goes, "Guess what's happening? You're not getting a dime off." And he hung up the phone. He literally hung up the phone. And Kenny is probably one of the top salespeople in Canada for BMW, and that's how he treats every single customer. It's and he sells for list on every single car. Says, "Listen, if you discount this car, and I give you $1,000 off, it's going to be $25 a month on a 48-month lease. Is it really going to affect you? No, but it's going to affect me, and I'm the one who's going to end up servicing you. So guess what's happening? If you want to buy it off me and have 40 years of BMW Platinum experience, then you're paying for it." End of story.
I used to have a guy that says, go to a customer and say, "Sir, I'm going to give you fleet pricing." They go, "Oh, great. What is it? Full list each and every time."
I love that. I steal that. Hey, Jeff, I haven't thought of this literally in 10 years. And this is an absolutely true story because truth is always stranger, and in my case, funnier than fiction. A blind guy comes in, this is not a joke, with his daughter. And very nice. And he explains that obviously he needs to get around. His credit's immaculate. His daughter will be the designated driver. No problem. I do everything right. I didn't take advantage of him. I only beat up people that can fight fair. I make a deal with him. I'm rolling along. Next day I get the owner calls me in and says, "We have a problem with GMAC." I said, "What's the problem?" Now, again, my brain functions a little differently than normal people. Instead of saying, "Well, his daughter is the designated driver," when he said, "This guy's blind," I said, I just thought he was a bad driver. It gets better than this, though. We get over that after they start laughing, and the owner says, "Look, I'm sorry, my top salesman's a lunatic." I explained the daughter's the designated driver. I thought that was funny. That wasn't even close to the funniest thing. I get a call from the guy, by the way, a sweetheart of a guy. "Mr. Feldman, yeah, how are you?" "Great." He says, "I got to tell you, kids is kids." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, kids is kids, no problem." He says, "My daughter, somebody must have got upset with her and they did like a little key scratch or something on the car. Can you fix it?" I says, "Man, we got a body shop. It would be my pleasure to take care of a customer like you." Long story short, they towed the car and it looked like it had been hit with an atom bomb. There wasn't one panel. Wait, and I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy because he's blind. She can tell him whatever the hell she wants. I'm not making this up. We fixed it. We did it beautiful. My right hand to God. 2 weeks later, I get a call. "Mr. Feldman, you ain't gonna believe this," but same thing. So every part of this deal from the beginning then was in warped Larry Feldman land. But nice guy. I didn't hurt him. We always took care of him. But I'll never forget when the guy from GMAC's face when I said I thought he was blind. I thought he was a bad driver. I didn't know he was blind. Once again, the guy that handled Peter's customer with trade-in, it's so much easier when you're smiling. Customers are like dogs. They smell fear. And when you're sweating or you're nervous, you're in trouble to begin with.
That reminds me, I think it was, what's his name? James Corden. And they were the carpool karaoke. And I think he had Stevie Wonder in the car. And he said to him when they finished one of their things, he says, "Pull over." He says, "Why?" He says, "I'm going to drive."
Whoa. He not only drives, he has a plane he flies, and Ray Charles was the same way. Crazy as that sounds.
Well, there's that movie. I think it's with Al Pacino where he goes that Ferrari dealer and he goes out driving this Ferrari. He's blind. But the funniest one I remember was this lady came in. I was selling Hondas at the time, and every single body panel on her car was damaged, and she wanted to talk to me about repair. And I said, "No, you should just start again." Clearly, fixing this is not a good idea. Just start again with a new car, new blank canvas. Learn to drive better next time.
And I'm on the lot with my used car manager.
Yeah.
This guy was always trying to steal people's trades. And I was heading for some kind of landmark, like 40 cars a month. Our store only did 150 cars a month. There was 12 other salespeople. And I really wanted this deal, and I was afraid if he stole it too much. I understand problem. So I go out, and he's starting to beat up the car, how damaged it is. I swear I'm not making this up. And I said, "You're always, man, acting ridiculous. The car's not that bad." And I went to open the door, and the door fell off.
Perfect. Well, I had a guy come in, Larry, believe it or not. I go out to appraise this car. The car's damaged all the way around. He's got a sunroof. He's got a garage, like a garbage bag taped on the top of it. We come up with the bag. He goes, "No, I think I'm going to keep it. I don't think I'm going to trade it in." I'm like, "Really?" Wow.
One thing I'd like to just jump on, and I know this is about funny stories and everything.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a funny anecdote for what the car business is. I started in 1982, and back then, and there's some people on this call that would remember, we did dealer trades using microfiche. Most people today don't even know what that is. The fax machine wasn't even invented at that point. We weren't using it. We walked the contracts to the bank. We called in the credit apps while the customer was there. We did all kinds of things. We didn't have computers. We had Rolodexes. We business cards were like gold to us. They were like credit cards because we could use them in so many ways to network. There was so much different back then. But I'll tell you, the funny part of all that is it was easier to sell a car than it is today. And you have better relationships with people. And that's the funny side of the car business. We're going backwards. And that's why we have great guys like Larry that will actually train that out of people, that and John and his systems, and it's so much more how would you say, reminiscent when I look at things and where I'm going today and pushing things. Sure, we all have great laugh and we talk about great stories, and I've watched two salesmen in a rush to do a test drive. They came out of opposite sides of the parking lot and backed into each other right in front of two sets of customers. and you're just sitting there shaking your head. I worked, like, most of my funny stories came from BMW days when the BMWs were getting stolen left, right, and center. So we pulled the fuel pump fuses on the cars so they wouldn't get stolen. And every new hire got his fuel pump fuse stolen from his car, so he couldn't get home on his first day. This little things that we did, and that's what makes this business great. As Larry says, why go to work if you can't have fun, right, Larry?
Peter, I tell this story all the time when I'm talking about how to do a walk around. That if you're going to show somebody a breakaway mirror, please make sure it's a breakaway mirror. Because I'll never forget waving at a guy across the lot, big guy, and he's going, "Watch this, folks," and I'm waving him down. I look like an air traffic controller, and he's a big guy. He hit the mirror, and of course the mirror broke. And I'll never forget the reaction of the customer. He was cool as hell. He went, "Son, I'm going to buy a car, but not that one. That one appears to have a broken mirror." I said, "John, I'm going to tell that story at your funeral. It's just too perfect."
Sure, it wasn't Brian Maxwell that did it.
No.
Well, I was doing some trading at a dealership. The gentleman, he sells cars part-time. He was 84 at the time, sells used cars. So I was talking to him because there's all this theory in the car business that, well, back in the 60s when there was only 3 or 4 choices, the closing ratio was higher. And I remember talking to this guy about, why he sold cars at that age and training him on phone scripts and all that stuff. And he says, I said, okay, so you had the big three and you had some Volkswagens. He said, yeah. I said, so what was the closing ratio at the time? He says, exactly the same as it is today. There was just less visits. People didn't have to shop very often. But the thing that was funny about him, and it was really interesting, is he picked up and learned new tactics better than the younger people at the dealership, not to beat them up, but he was I think he was 84 at the time, worked 3 days a week. And I asked him why. And he said, because he had to get out of the house because it drove his wife nuts when he was there all the time. So that I thought was really, really interesting. And I think he was in Edmonton, if I remember. But go ahead, John. You had
John Locke has been trying to get in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we've been talking about funny stories, but one of the things we sometimes forget is that, those of us that have had the opportunity and the pleasure to work in leadership roles at dealerships is bring fun to the business, right? And I remember having a gig that was going to last 4 to 6 weeks. A former employer of mine hired me to fill in while he was replacing one of his managers, since I put in the processes, etc., in the first place. And it was really interesting when we held the first sales meeting, and I wasn't the one facilitating, but it was more of a depression session. So we decided to change it up. So Larry, you'll appreciate the fact that we brought music into the sales meeting. So I had a sales manager with a boom box with a CD, upbeat. And so we would start that, and at the appropriate time, I would have him turn it down.
John, I have a sad announcement for you. Pierre Trudeau has passed away. I feel like this broadcast is from 30 years ago. And apparently his retarded son is going into politics when he grows up. I'm sorry, I just figured I'd mention it.
Yeah, perfect. Mess up my line, Larry. So anyway, so that was good. But what we decided to do was, I realized that I had a program within my computer, right, where I could edit music. So I brought it right into a PowerPoint presentation. Then I brought speakers that actually hooked into my laptop. Then we decided to take it a step further, and the sales manager called out one of his friends, installed an amplifier in the ceiling, and then we had the wire running down, so all I had to do was plug in. We then put in 3-way speakers in the ceiling as well. And when the people came in, the salespeople came in for the meeting, we referred to the initial song as The Gathering.
The Gathering.
Was just a blast. Yeah. And we played. So we would feature Stars of the Week. Originally, it was for people that sold at least 3 vehicles in the prior week. But it got so we had so many people that sold 3 vehicles in the prior week, we had to move it up to 4. And we would play for Star of the Week either Madonna's Lucky Star or Earth, Wind, and Fire's Shining Star. And then we'd show the names of the people that were the stars. It was a blast. People looked forward to sales meetings, and the level that the boardroom was on is also where accounting and everything else was. And people in accounting were dancing around, just having a blast. And the place was so much fun to work at. After the guy kept me there for 8.5 months rather than the 4 to 6 weeks. And after I left, one of the comments made at a party was, we never made as much money, we never had as much fun, and the place never ran as smooth. Why? Because we brought some fun into the business.
Yeah. Well,
100%.
How fun is the inversion that a Saturday morning meeting should have guys fired up? And a lot of times it was nothing but a beatdown session.
Yeah,
you'd be like a 1-cell paramecium by the time you called out. And that actually was a great idea, John. The problem was I was in a neighborhood where the average credit score was about 420. And if we piped music into the finance office, it would have been a Canadian connection. Neil Young singing "Helpless, Helpless, Helpless."
Hey, Larry, when I started.
Wait a minute, John's still laughing at the Neil Young reference. I'm trying to make all the Canadians feel comfortable.
I hear that. I hear that.
I mean, let's face it. You do have Trudeau, and he makes Joe Biden look like Abraham Lincoln. So my condolences to your country. That the snow and the mooses.
Neil Young ain't so popular in Western Canada anymore.
Here you go, Larry. First of all, you said that Trudeau was retarded. That's a slight against retarded people.
I was going to say I'll get stuff for anti-retarded defamation.
Okay. Yeah. So knowing that you're blunt on that side of the point, but when we talk about the sales meeting, when I started in this business, I was 19 and I was working for a Toyota dealership. And the sales meeting started off with this old English gentleman. He was a general manager. He was there every Saturday morning for the sales meeting. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Beatings will continue until morale improves."
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to share with you.
Wow.
I'm going to share with you a Saturday morning meeting, what we did. And Dave Jackson logged in, and he's in the Calgary area. I grew up in Calgary. I started working in Calgary. We had a Saturday morning meeting during Stampede Week. And the Calgary Stampede is a big deal to hit Calgary and everything. Nobody buys cars. Maybe it's changed, Dave. I don't know. But nobody was buying cars. So we had a Saturday morning meeting in the showroom, and the manager said we had the balloons there. So he told everybody to fill up a balloon with helium. Then, of course, this was a long time ago, so you could page and everybody could get on the pager at the same time. And we all got onto the pagers because there were 4 phones in the showroom and a couple offices. And the pager went off. Everybody did it. We all took a giant toke of our balloon and we all sang "Follow the Yellow Brick Road." And it was the Munchkins, and it was brilliant. The harmony was amazing. Follow.
I remember years ago, I used to be in charge of doing the balloons in the showroom when I first started in the car business. And I got a couple of the guys that I work with, just out of a joke to my manager, we did like 5 times the amount of normal balloons just for fucking fun. Because they're like, balloons don't sell anything, but let's see if it changes anything. And then I got all this grief from the managers, like, why did you do so many? Well, you didn't say how many balloons.
And your fingers felt really good after too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Sandy's watching online, just so you know, she's watching on streaming. So Joel is on. Maybe he has some thoughts on funny in the car business.
No, nothing funny.
Nothing funny. Wow.
Nothing funny.
Okay.
Hi, Larry.
And
Hi, Larry Feldman.
And Dave Jackson is on, as is Don Graff, and they've been both silent, as has Josh from Dealer Vantage. If anyone wants to chime in with a story.
Joel Benson playing with puppets and Jeff inhaling helium. I've never been on a show before. I was the normal one. This is very odd.
I got my flashing rubber ducky. So
no one said you were normal, Larry.
It's true.
That's
not normal. A lot of car guys have. And I think you all got to agree, we always have knickknacks on our desks to play with. I don't know how many times I talked to a customer and I'd sit there just doing something, that was before fidget spinners. Oh my God, could you imagine?
Someone came up with that.
Tell me something.
Go ahead.
I'm going to put a question to everybody. Tell me something that wasn't funny that actually turned out to be very funny.
I got an easy one. I absolutely, for anybody that doesn't know me well, I cannot stand the cold. Now, I was a minute or 2 late for this broadcast because I was playing tennis. I only quit because we were doing it. Everybody else was dying. Wow. I love the heat. When it's 100 degrees, I'm the guy you always see on the news in Philadelphia playing basketball or tennis. But I loathe the cold. I start catching cold in July. I always wear the heaviest coat. Everybody that knows me, you're never catching me in an outside football game. So it was in February, many, many years ago, and Philadelphia had a horrible cold spell, horrible. And the only people left in the showroom, we closed at 9, were myself, the GM, and a lot guy. And a guy came in at 8:45, Joel. He was wearing a windbreaker. Now I'm telling you, the wind chill was about 40 degrees below zero. Whoa. So I said, sir, by any chance, do you work construction? He's like, how do you know? How do I know, schmuck? It's 30 below zero. I got 3 coats on. I was setting my underwear on fire, and this guy's got a windbreaker on. I am not making this up. Said, all right. I zipped up my 3 coats. My nose was running. This is a big nose. When this runs, you can see it from outer space. We walked the entire lot. I swear to God, I turned to the guy, I'm not making this up, and said, sir, I am so effing cold that if you just go inside, I'll co-sign for you for a car. Please. I swear to God, we go in. He's still hale and hearty. I'm in pain. I'm crying. I'm so cold. We sit down at my desk, and he says, how about this one? He bought the car in front of my desk.
Oh man, the one I
still get in pain when I feel that story.
The one I used to remember is, I don't know if you've ever been to Staples, but they used to sell these big calculators that are like yay big, and the display is literally like about that big. And I thought it'd be a really good idea to buy this when I had someone really grinding me on a car deal. So I'd be like, okay, just so we're sure the math is right, let me program that in.
I love it.
And it became a great tool for negotiation, surprisingly, because the older people liked it because they could read it, and the younger people thought it was like a gag gift or something. So, I mean, it was one of these things where my manager at the time thought it was freaking nuts, but it actually worked really, really well. And really by accident, because I just got tired of having to like do all these calculations, because at the time we were doing a lot on a piece of paper. Like, we weren't using computers at the time. So that was kind of cool.
I had a Staples pencil, a giant pencil. And every time I went in to close the deal with the salesman, I'd walk in with the pencil. I'd put it down in front of the customer. Icebreaker right away.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
We had the easy button on everyone's desk.
Yeah, I use the easy button frequently. Yeah. You know, to your point, Ian, a friend of mine in the business, he had a large calculator.
Yeah.
And what he used it for, when a person was unhappy with the trade value, he'd say, so what you're telling me is you want to see a bigger number for your car? Yeah. So you pulled up the calculator. It'd be the same number, but it was bigger.
You didn't do the thing where you typed in, it became hello?
Oh yeah, the trade-in value, man. Ooh, yeah, that's. Oh, and by the way, we are doing a trade-in value show next week, just so you know.
Next week we're doing a trade-in.
And the lesson here is that when you go into work prepared to have fun, not only are you going to have fun, your customers might have fun, and you might actually sell more cars.
Oh yeah, like it always shocked me when I got into the training side of the car business, when I go into dealerships, and there'd be all these people that were really concerned about all kinds of stuff that had nothing to do with anything, but it was like a make work project. And I said, if you're not in this business and doing something fun, why are you doing it? Like, it's great that you can make a living, I get it, but if you're not having fun with it, to me, it's not the business for you. It just isn't.
But isn't that it? But, Ian, why broaden it out past the car business?
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying what you're doing, if it's not fun, if it's not pleasing you, why bother?
Right. And I just saw something, I think it was on LinkedIn this morning. It says, if you're not happy, you're not a tree,
you can move. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was always interesting when you had a group of salespeople, and essentially there'd always be one person that basically would make everyone else miserable. Like, why are you here? Like, I don't quite understand.
To cut out the cancer.
Yeah.
I used to have a dealer principal, and he was an immigrant from Iran and been here a long time. And we talk, and we'd go in a meeting, and he'd always come up with our colloquialisms and screw them up. And he said, he goes, I don't know what to do. I am losing my jacket. And so we all had a good laugh at that one. Boy, did everybody freeze? Nope. Or John just froze. We ended up creating a promotion. The last name was Banisad, and all the local guys couldn't pronounce it. They called him Mr. B. So we made a sign that says Mr. B's losing his jacket sale. And it was really good. It was quite funny.
Losing his jacket sale?
Losing his jacket. And then he'd go, of course, in Vancouver, we were in North Vancouver, there's a bridge, the Lions Gate Bridge. And somebody be upset about somebody, go, don't worry, it's just water under the Lions Gate Bridge. Anybody else comments? Everybody's smiling.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Oh,
The other thing that's great, the other thing that's great in the business is so many people have given others nicknames, and some of the nicknames have been hilarious.
Example?
Yeah, such as.
But John, but some of them are illogical. You're not going to believe this, you're not going to believe this, any of you. But my nickname was Crazy Larry. Can you figure that one out? That makes no sense.
No way.
I gotta run. Sorry, guys, I gotta run.
No worries. Thanks, Joel.
So one of the fellows that I worked with a number of years ago, actually, when I was doing this extended gig, they named him the Trunk Monkey.
The Trunk.
I don't know if you've ever seen the commercial,
Yeah.
but those commercials were hilarious. But they nicknamed him the Trunk Monkey. And when people would be looking for him, they say, "Have you seen the monkey? Where's the monkey?"
Well, I'll give you one last story. Back in the late 90s, and this is how I got my nickname in the business. I was nicknamed Eddie. And I was selling BMWs. Ed Robinson was the president of BMW Canada, and he did a site visit to my dealership. And he came into the dealership and he said, Where's your name tag? I said, well, when I start working at McDonald's, I'll wear one. But I'm selling BMWs and I'm not piercing a $2,000 suit. So that's that. And everyone called me Eddie from that on because I acted like the president of BMW. Maybe it was right, maybe it was wrong, but that's what I feel. And it was just one of those things. Who would stand up to a president of OEM as a salesperson? I did.
Which president was this?
Ed Robinson, president of BMW Canada.
When was that?
Late 80s.
Okay.
It was right before Peter started working at McDonald's.
That was back when these guys didn't matter to these the big manufacturers, because not long after that the president started to have were Germans.
Yes. Well, here's one last quick thing that reminded me, because of Jeff being a Chrysler guy, and I was a Chrysler guy as well. We remember back when the Cherokee Sports came out, and they were a hot item, and so we made a deal with Chrysler, and we got 100 of them, and we had to take them in black or in white, no other colors, black or white. That's all you could have. So we did this deal with Lion Safari, and we made them look like zebras. So it didn't matter if it was black or white; it looked like a zebra because we put white stripes on black ones and black stripes on white ones. Yeah. Well, we had a sales manager who wasn't the nicest guy, and he drove a Cherokee Sport. Well, we had 100 of them. We parked his right in the middle of the 100, or we park it at the first row or the last row. He never knew where we park it, and there were 10 rows wide and 5 rows deep. He never knew where his car was. He would have to dig it out every single day.
And that was before the panic button.
Yep.
Well, do you remember when they had to buy like hundreds of the 2-doors? Mm-hmm. Did you ever see the Grizzly edition?
No.
No, Chrysler had either they had a production thing, they made a deal with them. They got about 5,000 Cherokee 2-doors. And then they made, like they all do, they put a sticker on called it the Grizzly edition, put mags on it. And before that, you couldn't give away a 2-door Cherokee. And then they sold like hotcakes. Like, we were one of the few dealers to take like 100 of them. And we sold them in literally 2 weeks, when you consider we'd sold 3 the year before. So it's very interesting what they do. Any final comments from everybody? Anybody?
Great show today. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for the laugh. Normally it's Larry telling the jokes. At least we got to tell a few today.
Oh, I have to say that what started out as a tragic thing turned into probably the biggest joke that any of us have seen in the car industry in the last couple of years was that video that went of the 2 managers fighting in the California Toyota store.
Oh my God. Yeah.
How would you feel being those 2 people to become the laughing stock of the industry?
Embarrassed would be the way I'd look at it. I mean, it's amazing to me that people can have fun and it's all good, but when people just misbehave, for dumb reasons that people just go, hey man, like, what are you doing? Like, it's like, I think I was watching something this morning. It was a bunch of state troopers chasing down a car, and then another police officer was throwing down a spike belt. And then the guy they were chasing ran over the police officers who's trying to deploy it. It was like, that's crazy. But more importantly, like, why aren't you helping that guy versus taking a video of it? It was just like, wow.
Well, you know what, though? Here's something funny, and I'll guarantee everybody on here can talk about this.
Yeah.
It wasn't that uncommon to see people fighting in a car dealership. The difference was there was nobody there with a video camera to take the picture.
But
and that's, you know.
But act as if. Like, that's the thing that I think always surprises me. So you can have a lot of fun, and it can be very clean fun even. It can be hilarious fun. But sometimes people just go over the line. And at that point, you got to say, listen, dude, like, you know, back off. Like, what are you doing? And I think part of it is just maybe they don't have fun enough. So when they do, it goes crazy. But I think part of it is just a lack of boundaries, right? So that's what sort of
not enough, Ian, not enough backbone and too much spectatoritis. Yeah, let me just watch this instead of jumping in and fixing it or lending a hand.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
The scary part is, and this has gone away from funny now, it's actually tragic, because rather than helping, people pull out their phone.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's a real shame, because everybody wants to be that viral person. They think they're going to be famous. Why? You got 100 shares? Oh, well.
Exactly.
Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us. That was a lot of fun. And next week we have our appraising show, and that should be interesting. We have Nick from VetX on, and it's quite interesting how I had a conversation with him a few weeks ago, and he said that they run into a lot of people that they don't appraise the trade.
Yeah,
it's the way things are right now. They got the car, you know, we used to call it a wall job. I don't know what you called it, but where they park it up beside the wall, nobody would look at the car. They'd give them a number, boom. And I see it all the time now in the auctions where dealers are running a car as is, and the manager's never even gotten the car.
Yeah.
Anyway,
they were talking about that Friday. Tommy was talking about that, how you really need to drive the car.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Anyway,
so
have a great week. We're out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Oh la What?
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.